This is delightful. I'm so glad we came here. Feel those vibrations at Camp Video Games.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Camp Video Games, a podcast that discusses video games and their multimedia adaptations. I am Junior Camp Counselor Sean, and joining me is Junior Camp Counselor Josh.
Hello, campers. This is Junior Camp Counselor Josh. I'm here to remind you that if you start getting trash piled up in the woods, in, say, patterns of 4, make sure that you are actually clearing the trash line by line instead of just waiting and hoping eventually a just long vertical piece of trash will come along to help you clear all the trash. Otherwise, you're going to be in big trouble eventually.
That's right, Junior Camp Counselor Josh. It's important to, don't go for the full 4 rows. Just get one at a time. Guys, we're talking about Tetris today. Both the original video game and the somewhat new-ish
2023.
movie.
That's a new to me movie.
Yeah. Tetris is a pretty important game in the grand scheme of things. To talk about it on a personal level, it is my desert island game. This is the one video game that I could play for the rest of my life. And I do play it every day. When I'm taking a big old dump, I'm playing Tetris.
That's a very deep experience. This is the game I play when I take dump.
Yeah, it's the perfect game.
No, it's the doom of puzzle games. Like if you want to play Tetris, if you have a device, you can find a way to play Tetris on it.
That's a really good way of putting it. And it's also like there are so many Tetris clones, the same way that there were so many Doom clones at the early 90s, late 80s.
Yeah. We're going to talk about first our experience playing Tetris. Sean plays it every day. I just played it this past week. I did a run of 3 or 4 different versions.
The Game Boy version.
Yeah, so I played the Game Boy version, the NES version, and then one I'd never played, which was Tetris and Dr. Mario, which will be I'll talk about that more. But there's some interesting stuff there. That was my experience. I do not play it regularly at this point in my life, but I said, oh, there's this movie. There's a video game movie. These guys, they're finding these stories about, like, this is a trend that's happening in movies right now.
The product biopic.
Yeah, how a product came to be thing. I don't understand it. We'll talk about the movie later, but I don't have strong feelings, strong positive feelings towards that trend. It might leak over into my feelings on the movie a little bit, but that's for later in this conversation. Sure. In the meantime, let's talk Tetris, the game, a little bit more.
I have to assume that every person alive has played Tetris. Like, it's just such a
like any person
widespread
who has
game.
touched an electronic. I'll add one more note to that. Like a just quick anecdote that I think it was last summer. My older sister's family was visiting, and my nephew was 12 at the time, or 11, I don't know. And he was all excited to find my old video game systems at his grandparents' house, or whatever weird treasures I had laying around. And we did find 2 of our Game Boys, and Tetris was the one thing that was left.
Yeah.
And his mom, my sister, who resents that her children play video games,
Sure. An anti-screen time mom.
Yeah. Just picked it up and was just zoned out for a couple hours off and on throughout their visit.
Your sister was?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Okay. It's that game. Anybody can pick up and play Tetris.
Totally.
The point of the story.
It's the game that needs no introduction, but in the weird off chance that you've never played or heard of Tetris before, the gameplay is it consists of lining up a variety of different 4-block shapes to create horizontal rows that once completed will disappear. Like it's a building / destruction game where, and it's a game that has no narrative. There's no characters to discuss. There are levels, but it's just an increase of speed, really.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that really changes it. And I'm going to be talking specifically about the NES version of Tetris. That's what I play. I don't have an NES in my bathroom, but I do have a flash card in my DS that has a huge library of NES games. And I could get into the differences between the NES and the Game Boy version, but I just want to say that this is a game that they're still making new versions of it.
Yeah,
and
I played both of those, so we might.
Yeah, that's good. That's good because I have very little experience with anything outside of the NES version, and most people probably played the Game Boy version because it was included with the hand console. But the NES version is a superior. It is my desert island game. It is the only game that I need to stay sane. It's definitely working. I'm fine.
Everything's good. Everybody's fine.
But it's a magical game. It's got something to it. It's just that lightning in a bottle that is impossible to replicate on par with the original.
Right.
It's go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, for me, the modern contender of this would be Suika game. It's like hitting the same notes for me, which I don't know if I've talked about on the podcast before, but you're making a puzzled face, so I'll explain it. It's AKA the fruit game, which my partner has put, again, somebody who does not play video games has put like dozens of hours into Suika game.
I've never even heard of it.
It's like a $3 buy on the Switch online or whatever. It's this like dumb little game where somebody made like, it's just different types of fruit that have cute little faces on them. You match two of the same, it turns into the bigger version, and your goal is to like just keep dropping fruit in this basket and get bigger and bigger fruit without the basket overflowing. So it's conceptually the same as Tetris of like like the higher you go vertically, the higher the tension, the higher the anxiety.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about Suika game is it never speeds up. It's always like your choice when you drop.
Yeah.
So I was like kind of reveling in the like evolution of the tension of release of Tetris as the peak puzzle game. And now like that is like, again, my girlfriend and I's like peak puzzle game is Suika game. It's like the evolution of what Tetris started is like we're still finding new ways to adapt and evolve this very simple idea of things falling. You know?
Yeah.
And you have to clear space to make space for more things to fall.
Like what Tetris activates in the human mind, it's a little bit of like crisis management. It's a lot of constructive like thinking is required. You need to like quickly make a decision and snap decisions. You need to understand, the whole goal was to build enough blocks to the left from left to right so that you can then complete it. And it's tension, release. Yeah. It is an incredibly satisfying game to play if things are going well. Mm-hmm. And it activates that stressor in your brain when things aren't going well.
Yeah. I'm going to make one more comparison to Suika game because, again, it's the tension and release of this style of puzzle game. I just think it's just one of like the most brilliant things in game design. And the way they do it in Suika game is instead of time, like in Tetris, which, in case you don't know what Tetris looks like, I'm previewing on our YouTube version of the show, myself playing the Game Boy edition, of things fall. And you have to make that decision, like Sean's saying, as it's falling. In Suika game, again, you make the decision, but then when you drop it, instead of locking into place, there's like a physics engine. And all these fruits have like weight and balance on top of each other. Yeah. So the tension and release happens after you make your choice.
Oh, fun.
And you get and sometimes it'll take like 10 to 15 seconds for things to like settle. And it's very, I don't know. I just think it's beautiful that like, again, it's the same concept we've had since when was Tetris made?
87, I believe. 85, maybe. It was developed in the Soviet Union.
85 was the original development, yeah. And like 2023, somebody came up with a new sort of like evolution of it. It's like it is the sort of system or the mechanics that just like keep giving. There's no denying. Like there is staying power in Tetris.
Oh, absolutely. It's what to talk about like how Tetris helps me as a person. There's been a lot of studies into Tetris as a therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. And if I were to talk about it anecdotally, the way that Tetris has helped me, who I've gone through quite a bit of trauma, and what Tetris does is while you're hurrying to build this row and you're trying to complete something, but as soon as you finish it, poof, it's gone. And I think on like a primal level, what Tetris teaches you is that nothing is forever, and that things, despite despite your best efforts, things are going to keep like. Just recently, somebody quote unquote beat Tetris. It was like a 15-year-old kid.
Oh, I wish we had pulled that clip. It's really great.
It's incredible. I cried when I watched it because it was like it was like it's like they proved my religion was wrong. Like they empirically proved that no, you can beat Tetris. Like it's not.
But it's like he crashes the game, right? Isn't that
yeah.
Beats it. So it's yes and no. It's like there's just an end point that it can't keep going.
The interesting study that someone made like their thesis on Tetris. I don't remember what university it was, but the author was hypothetically searching for if a forever game of Tetris could happen. If you had, you know, if you have perfect reaction speed and you're able to keep up with the timing as it keeps going on, could you theoretically play Tetris forever? And the basic finding was like, no, you can't, because eventually the long eyepiece is going to show up less and less, and there's going to be gaps that will inevitably cause the screen to fill up eventually, right? Because like the regular strategy for playing Tetris is you build up everywhere, and you're trying to have, you know, nice tight fitting, everything's modular and it's fitting right into each other, and then there's going to be one big gap that you could then fill with the long piece. And I don't know the specific names of I know that they're called tetraminos, I believe. I didn't take notes for this because I was like,
because it's Tetris.
Yeah,
we know
like,
Tetris.
You know Tetris. Well, do I?
There's no like, and we're not, you know, normally this is more of like a, especially when we do like an RPG like Final Fantasy VII, it's more of a story analysis podcast.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I don't even know how we take notes on Tetris. I mean, I have some thoughts about evolution of, you know, design and sound and controls that I can talk about in a bit, but yeah, anyway.
there's inevitably going to be too many gaps building up, and yeah. So there's no way that you could have an infinite game of Tetris going on. But there's a strategy to Tetris, and it's not just be good at it. There is, in my experience with it, to play a good game of Tetris, the strategy would be to have everything go as far left as you can. It's like politics. It's like to do a good job, just go as far left as you can. Yeah. And you know, you'll be in the more
eventually right. some dick's gonna stop you and pull you to the right.
That's right. Right. But the way that all the Tetris pieces are shaped, they favor an alignment with the building going on the left, and then the gap on the right. And that's how I started playing it after I read about that. It was another one of those studies where it's just like, how do you get better at Tetris? Because it's like, if you watch, you know, Tetris tournaments, they're playing at max speed and they're holding their controllers in a different way so that they can like do this like instead of playing with your thumbs, you're playing with your fingers. It's
that tap thing.
Yeah.
You've seen that?
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Where they're like they found a way to use like
this rhythmic tapping.
Yes. And it's actually the same method that if you're shooting like a cowboy gun, which is called a single action revolver, there is a method where you can rapid fire it, not just by fanning it with your hand, like one after the other. You use your fingers and you go like with your pointer, your ring, your middle, and your pointer finger, or something along those lines. And you can shoot 4 shots in a rapid succession as quickly as you can pull the hammer back.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Tetris. I don't know what that like strategy is called, but it's some form of using the base Nintendo controller, and you're able to manipulate the buttons more quickly than if you were using your thumbs.
Now, I'm again streaming some of my playthrough on the Game Boy version. I have zero strategy. I do not play Tetris enough to have any idea what I'm doing strategy wise.
Yeah, yeah.
I played like 3 or 4 games on each of the versions I played. I eventually I started, if I like rewatched as I rewatched my playthroughs, I could see like I started going like first game I was like just go for a big Tetris. So yeah, which is when you drop a stick and it hits all 4, right?
If you make all 4 disappear at once, that's a Tetris.
Yeah, and I did very bad.
It's hard. It's hard to do that.
I learned to go a little bit more line by line. And then this may be a good opportunity to talk about like if you start at 0, what's like your average limit you hit level wise?
So I don't start at 0. I'm glad you brought that up. I always start at level 7. And that's the speed that I'm most comfortable with, because I play for the love of the game. I'm not trying to beat a high score. I don't even pay attention to the score. It is completely irrelevant to me. This is, I think, like philosophically, Tetris like shows what kind of gamer I am, where it's like I am playing this because it brings me joy and nothing else. Like it is a source of comfort that I have come to somewhat rely on, and it's completely irrelevant what the scores go, but I like to start at level 7. That's a very comfortable speed for me, because level 0, I mean, it's a snail's pace, and I end up making more errors because some of the different ways that you can manipulate the Tetris pieces as they're falling down, you rotate them to fit a variety of different angles, but then you can also control the speed going down. You can make it go down faster. You can't make it go down more slowly until more recently. Like for the phone, like I play Tetris on my phone sometimes, and that where if you're manipulating which angle you want the piece to fall down, the piece will stop midway. And I don't like that. That takes all of the the urgency out of your movements, and that becomes more strategy than reflex. Because that's really what Tetris is doing. It is combining like strategy in terms of like, how do I make a close fitting, construction without any gaps, but also, with the timer going very quickly, how do I do it on the fly, instinctively? And you start to learn. If you play as much as I do, you'll see Tetris in real life sometimes. It's just like the pieces are actually like I'm looking at, the behind Counselor Josh, and like I can see where different Tetris pieces would fit in the like just the way that's the way my eyeballs work now. Yeah. I'm forever ruined by Tetris.
One thing I was wondering about in my playthroughs, and I haven't done enough research to figure this out or figure out if it changes by release, but like block distribution, is it truly random? Do you know?
Yes. Recently, they started guaranteeing more long pieces, I think, because I don't know. I would say that they've nerfed Tetris in recent releases.
Goddamn kids these days have no patience.
Yeah, and they just got to win, don't they? They get their participation trophies in Tetris. Whereas me, you got to... and here's the thing, though. Once you wipe, stop playing Tetris. Like, you got to have a pre-poopy hand if you're playing Tetris in the bathroom. You got to play it, and then when you're ready to wipe, you put the game down.
Oh, I thought you meant when you lose, like to wipe out. Like, only lose once and put it down, which is probably the right way for me to play. I get too frustrated at losing things. So, I personally, for the purpose of this podcast, I mentioned already, I played the Game Boy version most of us are familiar with.
Yeah.
which is what's streaming on the YouTube edition right now. And I did the NES version and a Super Nintendo version, and there was something like about the Game Boy version that felt the most like pure in the experience to me. I think like the NES version played better, but like just felt like, I don't know how much of it's nostalgia, but like the purity of the game felt the most at home in the Game Boy version, which we can also talk about more when we talk about the movie, because that's a big part of the movie.
Sure.
Is the popularity of the Game Boy version.
It's got to be said that like Tetris saved the American road trip. It gave kids something to do, and mom and dad can just listen to Bill O'Reilly or whatever as they're driving to Florida.
Yeah. And like I will also note there's again something to the purity of the sound of the Game Boy version, which is limited by, I believe, Game Boy, like the audio chipset is a 4-channel. I forget if there's 4 channels for music and then one more for sound effects. I forget how that works exactly.
I'm not the tech guy,
but all the editions of Tetris that I played, you get the A, B, or C choice of music.
Yeah, C baby. C music is the best.
And the NES version and Super Nintendo version, the C music was like the derivation away from Russian, I don't know what it is, folk music. What is the Tetris song?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like that Russian polka music kind of thing.
Kind of embarrassing. Like we're doing an episode about Tetris, and like we don't know the fucking Tetris song.
Whatever. This is not a research podcast. Yeah. This is vibes only, baby.
Yeah, we always reiterate that we are the Hawaiian shirt wearing critics of video games.
Yes.
But
no ties in sight.
But they are like truly they are actual, like, I'm going to say Russian folk songs.
Yeah.
And then there's like each version I played, there'd be like a C version where it's like, oh, they just let some Western guy cook on this one.
Yeah. the NES C version music is like boo, 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 boo. It's very spacey.
Yeah,
I love
a lot more meditative.
It sounds like a Metroid like level music. It's very soothing. The ba 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 ba, like the Tetris music.
Yeah,
that gets old real quick. It kind of takes you back to like we've talked about like Koji Kondo as the composer of the Super Mario Brothers theme, and how his goal was to make music that you could just listen to on a loop without getting sick of it.
Yeah,
and like. Sure, props to Super Mario Brothers for like creating that perfect music. I get real sick of the Tetris music.
I do, yeah. I can't play with the original music, which I cheated. I pulled up Wikipedia on it. It's a 1860s Russian folk tune, Korobainiki, which is probably, we shouldn't have even looked it up because I'm probably butchering pronunciation.
I know, now Russia's going to hate America.
But it is interesting. It first appeared in the 88 Apple IIgs version of the game, not the Game Boy version, because again, we'll talk about it in the movie, like how licenses and releases.
Oh, it's fascinating.
If you love license law, you'll love Tetris the movie.
End of review.
But I definitely am not the greatest Tetris player in the world, but I did, like I said, my due diligence of playing a few different versions. NES version maybe being my favorite. Like I think you maybe said that ahead of time. Like maybe I think you recommended it.
Oh, I demanded. I was like, if you're gonna play Tetris, don't just play the Game Boy version. And like it's like, but to be fair, the Game Boy version is the version most people have played.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers. I don't care how well it sold. We all know what Tetris is. It's like that's like talking about like, oh, how many Bibles were sold last year? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
it really is the Bible of video games.
It's completely irrelevant.
It's like you feel like you could open up a hotel room side drawer and find a copy of Tetris.
Campers, go head back to your bunks, and in every drawer, every underwear drawer, we've got a Game Boy with Tetris in it, just for you.
Yeah.
Here at Camp Video Games.
I think the NES version, there's a certain dialed in beauty to it.
Yeah.
The piece design is very, I don't know, like there's something like it's just the right amount of like sort of color and shine contrasted with this gray, very like Mega Man Capcom-esque background.
Oh, you just
like not
you nailed that. I just got goosebumps.
like it's not too busy. It's like the visual focus is right. The controls felt amazing. It was a lot smoother than the Game Boy edition, all around. And like being that I was playing it for the first time in 25 years.
Yeah.
Like every few levels you get a change of color scheme. And it's just like, ooh.
Yeah.
It's
like,
like
ooh,
it's
candy.
Yeah, and being like, ooh, that's a cool color scheme. Yeah, the candiness of it has a very like candy shine to it.
Yeah. There has to be Tetris candy out there.
Yeah.
Like, because I want that.
I think I've had that.
Yeah.
And then I also dabbled a little bit with, I have, no, who knows where they came from? They're totally legal. Hundreds upon hundreds of Game Boy, NES, and Super Nintendo games at my disposal.
Well, Gene Council Josh has a basement dedicated to his massive video game collection.
Yeah, it's just I swear, all legally purchased.
It's weird that you keep them in
Physical
gun safes.
copies in gun safes, fireproof gun safes. I pull the cartridges out and put in a new one when I play one. But for Super Nintendo,
Josh, I just got really depressed because I realized if my house caught on fire, I would get my video games out first. Like, I don't have that.
To be fair, most of your animals live outside the house.
Yeah, they're fine.
And you don't have any children, so
Never.
it's fine.
Never.
But I played Dr. Mario and Tetris because from my collection, I was like, I think this is the one that has the most true to baseline Tetris.
Interesting.
Because I had like Tetris Attack, Tetris 2, Tetris Blast, Tetris whatever. Like there's so many new derivatives of Tetris now. And some pros of this game, I fired it up and immediately there's a load screen for what's the word I'm looking for? The main screen.
Sure, title screen.
Landing title screen. And you just get blasted by this music that I'm like, ooh,
Who's that lady?
ooh, that's stanky. What's going on here? And literally, if you go watch my stream, I open it up, it plays for like 10 seconds. I go, ooh, are we playing Earthbound right now?
One of the best soundtracks.
And then there's also like a mixed match version where you play Tetris for like a few rounds and then it switches to Dr. Mario. And you do it competitively. And that has another like title screen music, which is even stankier. Ooh. And I was like, dude, this has got to be. And I looked it up. It is indeed the same composer who did Earthbound's music.
Oh, nice.
Did Dr. Mario and Tetris. And
well,
it is so vibey. You can just let it roll for hours.
I'll have to go into my basement full of gun safes full of video games and find my copy of Tetris and Dr. Mario, and I'll play that too.
But I will, again, for the people who watch on YouTube, I'm going to pull up this and I think something happened here with like the SNES that like if I were to just purely play Tetris, I would not choose this version.
Okay.
I'm showing it to Counselor Sean right now. To me, it's just it's a lot busier than the other one visually.
There's the graphic backgrounds that it looks like a construction site. There's like weird chains
like everywhere.
It looks like my diary when I was a kid. I would like draw chains on and be like, keep out, do not read.
It's like pea yellow and like there's just two the block colors are very well done, I'll give them that, but then and we're not listening to the audio, but I think I played around with the original. Again, I'm not going to butcher the Russian folk song pronunciation, and they were like, ooh, we've got this Super Nintendo, we've got all these channels we can use for the music now, and it's just like distracting because there's just like too much depth to the music.
I totally follow. Yeah.
It's like you lose a little bit of like the flow statiness by like how busy everything is visually and audio wise. And like, I think there's also like some of the dropping sound effects are just like too like heavy. Like just like a lot of little details add up that like in the early releases of Tetris, they really nailed it. And I've played a lot of like variations of Tetris over the years. I remember some college friends. They were girls, so I wanted to go hang out there all the time. They were girls who welcomed me in their home. So I was like, yeah, I want to hang out there all the time.
What's that like?
Yeah. But they were really into like, it was like a Nintendo 64, like Tetris break or blast or like some kind of competitive thing.
Yeah.
Where there's like all these variations of like, oh, you have to like make this type of shape and then it'll attack the other player. I'm like, it's too much.
Yeah.
That's the kind of Tetris player.
I think I played with them.
Yeah, this is we don't name names, but yeah. Anyway, it's like the kind of thing is like they nailed it early on, and I think it's like maybe what I'm getting at is like the variations on Tetris itself. It's like I think we're maybe out of juice. I didn't play Tetris 99 for this sort of episode.
Yeah, you were telling me before we started this. Like, go tell.
But I
tell
have
campers.
played Tetris 99. I think I've talked about Mario 35 on the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is the battle royale game. It was only live for about a year,
Bring it back.
and I want it back. Which I think our next episode we're going to talk about the NES Championship Edition game.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, which just came out the week we're recording this, and it's like it almost hits what Mario 35 does for me, but not quite.
Yeah.
But anyway, Tetris 99 is the same idea. It's a battle royale. It's you and then these tiny little images of 98 other players who are playing in an elimination Tetris match. And it's you can like be sending stuff back and forth, which I loved in Mario 35, but for Tetris, I'm like, this is not what Tetris is.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm so glad you brought up the phrase flow state, because like that is what I think a lot of people experience that for the first time by playing Tetris. And that's one of the reasons why it's so universally beloved, is because it helps people access a state of consciousness that is hard to really like.
You definitely ain't getting it in your day job. I can tell you that much.
I have to say though, as a farmer, I do get it, because I'm lucky enough to have like a job that requires a lot of very repetitive physical like labor.
Yeah,
and
the average, alienated laborer under capitalism, we'll say, is not experiencing flow state.
no, I don't think you're gonna hit flow state like doing like a TPS report.
Yeah, I mean, there are people out there who just fucking love doing Excel. We were actually just talking about this at an improv rehearsal yesterday. Like, for some reason, we're
How do
making
you rehearse improv?
yeah, that's the joke. Anyway, I've only heard that 1,000 times, but anyway, so I forget why we're talking about like speed running for some reason, and somebody made a joke about a speed running Excel, and somebody was like, "No, people like there's actually Excel speed runs." You know?
Yeah, I've seen it.
What I love speed runs of now are beat making. People,
I see that. Yeah,
they're
yeah.
awesome.
That's so cool.
It'll be like a 15-year-old kid who's gonna be like, "Oh, I'm gonna make." I can't think of the like one that I've seen.
The thong. I saw the thong song. He was like, "I'm gonna redo the thong song."
Yeah.
In like 10.
They'll do it in like 10 to 20 seconds.
Yeah, it's
incredible.
insane. In a good way.
Yeah. What did that have to do with flow states? I'm sorry if I.
Well, that's how you can access the flow state. I mean, like once you are like so locked in and you're comfortable and you're fluent in the inputs and you're able to do it without even like sacrificing your attention is locked in, but you're able to do things as if you're not even there doing it. It's a transcendent state of mind. It's an incredible like Tetris is a gift to humanity.
Yeah.
Like it is so incredibly beneficial to. I mean, I might be getting a little too wooey here, but like I think humanity evolved when Tetris became available. I'm not even like being facetious.
No, I mean, like we were saying, it did for puzzle games like what Doom did for shooters, right? But it is like something bigger than that, because not like Doom isn't the kind of thing you can hand to anybody on the planet.
No, my grandparents would not understand
right.
Doom.
They
like
hand it
Tetris.
to any sort of, let's just say, quote unquote gamer, somebody who's just plays a diverse array of genres of game.
Yeah.
I feel like Doom, you can hand it to somebody in modern times and like you can still vibe with it. The speed of it is very flowy, like we're saying, that it holds up well. But Tetris is like, put it in the hands of anybody on the planet and they're just gonna be like, they're gonna get into that flow if they have the time and whatever, right?
I can't stop watching this Tetris footage. It's so beautiful. Like, just like the way that it
Not my playing, but just the game itself.
yeah, no, you're dog shit at this, but this is fun.
So bad.
No, you're doing fine. You're making a lot of the same, because like I'm watching it and in real time, I'm like, what would I be doing right now? Because like I can't help it. And you're making I'd say you're making like 50% of the choices that I would make.
And actually I asked you earlier about like what's your average level you make up to, and you said you don't really like start from zero, but I always have been starting from zero, and I kind of think I did that as a kid too, but like I think on all these playthroughs I on average cap out at like level 7 or 8 is when it's
It gets just clippy enough that you're like, yeah, like we're at a nice pace here.
Yeah.
It's like, first you're walking, then you're jogging, then you're running, then you're sprinting, and
then you make a mistake, which I think is both the most frustrating and fascinating thing about the game, is the way it's like it's a prison of your own design when you fuck up.
oh yeah,
And then the challenge becomes not like something the game has presented new to you. So it's not like Elden Ring, I've reached this new boss that's like, oh, come on, what the fuck?
Right.
It's like, oh no, I got myself into this. I have to get myself out because I made a mistake.
it's a gulag of your own design.
I don't know. That's the game Tetris. I mean, what else do we need to say about the game before we get into the movie?
I just see this as an opportunity to tell people, like, campers, play Tetris. Like, do yourself a favor. It will do something for you. I don't know if people, like, if you dislike like puzzle games, I completely understand.
But if you're somebody who if you're a deep hobbyist of gaming or an aspiring designer and you're not going back and playing these original releases of Tetris, like, you're not doing your homework.
Sure. I mean, to be a good writer, you need to read the canon.
Yeah.
Like, you got to understand what's been done and how people reacted to good things long ago. Like, it's engaging enough for modern audiences. It is, I mean, it's a timeless game. It's bold colors. It's beautiful. It's got a great soundtrack. The gameplay is infinitely interesting. You're not going to play the same game twice ever. Mm-hmm. And there's no shortage of new ways to innovate on it. I just wish that the modern releases of Tetris gave you more options to play classically.
Right. Yeah, like I was saying with Tetris 99, it's kind of like playing this chaos or nothing. Mm-hmm. But that being said, the Switch also has does it have Tetris on the Game Boy?
Just the Game Boy. Yeah.
On the Game Boy.
They only have the Game Boy version for Switch Online.
Right.
I really wish they had the NES version, but
that would be
they don't.
That by far, I think, was the sort of
definitive Tetris,
most purely well-designed version of the game that I played. Again, there's dozens and dozens more out there.
There's too much, and just thinking about it before we start talking about the movie, I have a board, a tabletop version of Tetris where you roll a dice and it gives you a piece, and then you need to fit it in. It's a lot of fun.
That's
and
awesome.
Like, that's one of those things like where it's like, when the bombs drop, when the grid is down, I'm still playing Tetris, baby. It's never game over for Junior Counsel Sean.
Yeah. Also, just because it came up as we were watching my stream footage, there's this really cute when you lose in the SNES version, this Tetris Dr. Mario that I played, this rotating 3D quote unquote brick of Tetris. It's, I think, 6 different stills of a quote unquote rotate 3D
it's a
piece.
It's a rudimentary animation.
It's like it's almost like a harbinger of like, this is what we're gonna fuck up Tetris from here on out. Because we gotta do 3D, dude.
Yeah, it looks like a discarded like asset from Star Fox.
Yeah, if you've listened back to this podcast, I think you can find that we've sort of decided there's like a sort of wasteland of video game design of like the mid 90s through early aughts of like everybody's like, we gotta do 3D, and 95% of it's just fucking awful.
Yeah, that's the problem with tracing trends instead of just trying to make a genuinely good game.
Yeah, like, and now it's I think that desert is like, unfortunately, it's like even darker and even more cynical in like microtransactions and like battle passes and live service. It's like, can I please just have a good game? Just give me a good game.
Did you hear about this Star Wars game that like half of the game is inaccessible if you don't buy like the premium like you can buy the game at a big price. It's still like a $70 game, but then there's an entire like gigantic scoop of the game is
this a new one, or is this like Star Wars Battle, whatever?
No, I don't think it's Battlefield. It's one of the. I think it's one of the more narratively driven one, Jedi or something like that.
Who cares? I'm never playing another Star Wars
Star Wars
game.
can suck it. It's like so uninteresting at this point,
right?
It's just like I guess why I dislike Star Wars is like why I dislike a lot of like modern media, because it's just a product at this point. There's no artistry, and like sure they might be hiring some interesting like filmmakers to work on Star Wars movies, but they're just hacks. They're just getting a job, and like they're
I think I would, for my takes on modern Star Wars, I would point people to like any like red letter media review of a recent Star Wars property. Like they kind of nail it all. And they're very good at like, just because we're on the topic for a second, like they're very good at breaking down like also like the culture war nonsense of it in a objective way. And I just won't comment because they're so much more tactful than I probably could be. But they
edit their shows.
Yeah.
They cut stuff out. We don't. Rich Evans summarized Star Wars best, where he's like, it's not an interesting world. The only interesting part about Star Wars was the magic and the war. And once you take that away, it's all nonsense.
Yeah. And anyway, we don't need to talk about Star Wars. We're talking about Tetris.
Dude, shout out Red Letter Media though. Like they're a huge inspiration to me. And every time they drop a new video, I am just like, okay, cool. I have something to do for at least an hour. It's always good. It's always good. They don't like phone it in ever. It's a hugely important like studio.
Yeah. Just because we have the footy, I just want to show a little bit of this like Tetris Dr. Mario competitive thing again. And so it's like we did this thing where they went, pure Tetris isn't good enough. How do we keep like squeezing blood from the stone?
How dare they?
And so it's like you play, and normal Tetris does this right, where like you can set it so that there's a bunch of trash built up part of the way, right? Is that in the original game?
If it is, I don't play it, and I'm not sure. Like I
think that's like the B style. Is that?
I really don't know. I am aware of that being a function, but it's something I have very little experience with, because I like starting with a fresh. Part of my healing is that I like starting with a blank screen and then filling it up with my own nonsense and dealing with it.
But I don't know. I didn't quite understand, but like how it was like I just played for a while, then all of a sudden it was like, now you're gonna play Dr. Mario, and I like trying to pull up a little bit of the footage. I don't know if you were ever a Dr. Mario guy.
I played the Game Boy version at like friends' houses, and I played a bit of it in recent years just because I have very little faith in like the medical industry, but I had to get a checkup somewhere, so I just went to Mario.
Somebody's got to look at my guts.
I got some blood work done.
I don't know if we can show any of that footage because I don't know if my internet's out or what here at Camp Video Games, but let's go on and talk about the movie instead of Dr. Mario. It's rusted.
So, Tetris 2023, the movie.
First question. Why?
You know, talking about the product placement biopic, you know, Barbie, Pop-Tarts, McDonald's,
Oh my
KFC.
Yeah.
Like the Ford Mustang or the Shelby GT or whatever that one Christian Bale where he played like a car guy. I don't know, dude. It's because money. Because people are brand loyalists.
Nothing new is interesting. All we know is products.
It's completely. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld making a Pop-Tart movie is the perfect like synthesis of what we're talking. Where it's just like there's no art.
Most like sad, cynical. Like I haven't watched that movie, but I've listened to other podcast reviews of it. Where people are like, everyone in it sounds so cynical, so bored.
Yeah.
Like it's just like Jerry Seinfeld being, what can I waste $90 million on?
It's it's a product of our time. Literally, it's a product of our time. It's a fascination with the genesis of these now household names.
Yeah.
And I think,
which if it's an interesting story, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like Barbie was good because it wasn't about that. Like it was something interesting about the product.
It humanized the product.
Yeah.
It gave a soul to the soulless product.
Yeah.
Like Barbie is no one. Barbie is no one, but she's everyone. She's the avatar for little girls that are like, they want their dolly and they want to like have a woman to look up to. And it's the same as like why, why they make G.I. Joes. It's just these like blank, slates that you can then
Which is
project
another
yourself
film
on.
series. I've seen a couple, and it is vapid.
The G.I. Joe movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, and also like with this movie, so I don't know why or how, but I have Apple TV Plus.
Yeah.
And I have a Apple TV hardware because I prefer watching media on that, mostly just because the hardware is designed well.
Yeah.
Like the navigation of it is just smooth.
It's got to be better than Roku.
It's way better than my like crappy Roku smart TV.
Yeah.
Like I just scream at it all the time. They're like, "Why are you putting ads on my home screen?"
I know,
like,
dude.
I didn't ask for this. And like it's
Apple TV
slow.
skipping that bullshit.
Your main Apple TV screen. It's clean. It's however you set up. Like I paid $170 for the Apple TV just because of like UI and UX.
One of my biggest regrets is giving my dad Apple TV. I should have kept that for myself. Complete waste.
But Apple TV Plus, their attempt at making original content, is the most, I don't know, like the right word, dystopian is coming up. Like
a good word.
When you go to it, you're like, these shows and movies, like they aren't real. It feels like if there was like a slate of like 30 Rock, like joke shows and movies in like a Netflix, like queue form.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like looking at Apple TV Plus's lineup. It's so unsettling and weird.
It's a bunch of cheap, like half-produced bullshit.
Yeah. But they get like big names. Like and I don't understand who it's for or why it's happening, other than that Apple just has like billions and billions of dollars in cash on hand.
Yeah.
And they're like, we got to spend it on something. And every company now that's as big as us has to be the everything company.
Yeah.
Therefore, we are an entertainment company now. And it's like, you're not good at it. Just stop.
I see Apple TV's like strategy is a lot of like product research, like what's big, what are
It feels very, yes. Yeah.
they're just trying to find out like what is getting the most like engaged. It's all those.
And how
those,
can we do like a derivative of that?
Yes, it's a very like cynical is the right word.
We're gonna probably use the word cynical a lot.
Yeah, I don't feel good about it.
No.
It's like this is why I spend I literally my primary media like vessel is YouTube because I follow like
Same.
like creator owned stations or channels and it's people without the influence of all this market reason. Sure, there's plenty of that in YouTube as well, patreon.com/campvideogames.com. But there's the joy of creation. You're seeing people who are engaging with the subject matter that they chose, that they are, they're appealing to the niche audience because they're talking from a place of authority. And it's like why Twitch streaming became a thing, because like we're like, oh, let's spend time with these people who care about these same things that we do. Apple TV saw that, like, ooh, they're all tuning in to watch the World Tetris tournament. And I mean, it's also, another anniversary, one of those landmark anniversaries for Tetris, 35 years at that point, I think. The same basic things that would lead to any massive corporation investing a little bit of money to get a probably not that spectacular return.
Yeah. I have no idea. Like I think one of the more, maybe the core of what's wrong with Apple TV Plus is that like they worked backwards from a platform. Like they were like, let's build a platform and then fill it with content. Whereas if you think about, I don't know. Because now I'm thinking about like, so we have, I'm going to go way back. 700 WLW is like the first broadcast radio station.
AM radio station.
And it started where we are. Camp Video Games is in or around Cincinnati, Ohio. And that's kind of the home of broadcast radio because 700 WLW started here. The Crosleys, who kind of invented commercial radio, that was kind of their thing, is they were like, oh, there's people are playing with these like little toy radios.
Ham radios?
There's nothing, I don't know if it was ham radio, but there was no content for it. So they started the station and they were just like, anybody, come in. Just like, here's a mic, just say stuff on it, sing stuff on it.
Yeah.
And like Apple feels like the like hyper neoliberal capitalism version of that with their TV Plus platform, where it's like, but instead of like just seeking out like any cool, weird creative, they're like, let's do it. Like you're saying, a ton of market research and see if we can decide what people want for them instead of just being like, let's just have creative weirdos try stuff.
Yes. They're not throwing the spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. They are throwing an uncooked box of pasta.
They're throwing a bunch of formulas into a spreadsheet and designing movies and TV shows from that, and it sucks.
I think it's like in John Carpenter's The Thing, when they burn one of the things and it starts like kind of morphing. It's like in between a dog and a monster and a human. Like that's Apple TV Plus's content, where they're like all these little like these weird disparate things just being like smooshed together
of a few different things, and you're like, I guess that's a TV show.
I guess this is a movie. I don't know.
Anyway,
Tetris 2023.
The Tetris movie is on Apple TV Plus.
Yes, available for rental. I just got the free trial for Apple TV Plus to watch this.
Yeah,
so
on top of that, the rentals are like $25.
Yeah, I'm not going to support them. Yeah. It's an easy decision just to say, oh, I am not going to renew my subscription after this 7-day trial period. So I really need to remember to cancel that. If only I would record myself saying that. Oh, good. I did. Tetris 2023 is the story, not necessarily of the creation of Tetris,
no,
but of the
licensing of Tetris
through the American lens.
So stupid. Like, I'm not gonna like 100% hate on this movie. There's some good stuff in there, but like this that base concept is just like, who fucking cares?
Yes.
It's like they try to like really heavily dramatize it. And it's like, and they're actually, I think they're in the middle of a lawsuit because they ripped off the book about this too much without asking permission.
They didn't get licensing rights about a movie about licensing rights. That is so Apple TV Plus. That's so funny, dude. Wow.
Yeah.
That's just the cream on top, isn't it?
This movie's existence is so bizarre.
In order to deal with the viewing experience, I had to play Tetris for like an hour just to get over it.
Yeah, I have to admit, our recording setup speaking of Apple, there's been some weird software updates that like all my audio hardware is not working out here by the bonfire. So I was trying to fix that while I was watching the movie last week. So I'm kind of in and out on the details, and like it's just like every time I tune in, I'm like, oh, they're talking about licensing rights again.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the short of it. Tetris is a legal thriller.
It's described as a thriller.
Yeah.
And like there's a car chase in it, I guess.
It's more the thrill of the licensing arbitration. It's not an interesting plot. It's fascinating in the sense that they made it the way they made it, because as soon as I finished watching it, I was like, I just consumed some very tilted propaganda.
Oh,
This is
heavy Red Scare propaganda.
Absolutely. They at one point in the movie, it's almost as if they implied that Gorbachev was like, "Thank you, America, for saving us with capitalism."
Yeah,
like,
for saving us from communism
We don't
by
know better.
licensing Tetris.
like the movie insinuates that Tetris prevented the Cold War from turning into a hot war.
Right. And it's very funny because like the propaganda is I don't know if we want to walk through the plot or not.
I don't.
Okay, because
I
I'm gonna
really
dive
don't.
into kind of like
We can talk about the short of it.
we'll do a quick summary. It's this guy.
Hank Rogers.
Yeah.
American, Dutch, Japanese guy.
So he I think is what is he like? He tries to like license games for video.
He's a
for
game
systems.
designer and a game publisher. So he designed the an early computer version of Go, which is like the oldest game that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to play it, so I'm not going to try to describe it. But Go it's a very, very important game in human consciousness.
And like they did it. I feel like I'm supposed to see him as like a Willy Loman kind of guy. Like,
I don't know
oh,
that
gee,
reference.
shucks, I'm down to my last dollar.
Is that Death of a
Gil from
Salesman?
The Simpsons?
Oh, okay.
It's the slightly more modern reference. Willy Loman's in The Death of a Salesman.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Like, I think you're supposed to see him as that way, and you're supposed to be kind of rooting for him.
I mean, he's the American excellence in this movie. He's like,
he's also that.
through his gumption and through his like,
So weird.
it's okay. So I watched a couple of like, after I finished the movie, there were like two little trailers that I could watch. And one was about like the real guys, Alexei Pajitnov, the creator of Tetris, the creator of Texas, Alexei Pajitnov and Hank Rogers, and like they're still like involved in Tetris to these days.
That's like the only interesting part of this story is the relationship between those two, and it's just kind of like that's kind of like a C plot.
Like here's the most like damning part of this movie is that like Alexei Pajitnov is the guy who created the game, and he's not the hero of this movie.
He's the damsel in distress.
He is a damsel in distress. He literally gets rescued by the American who bails him out of Russia and gets him a home in Florida or something like that. It's so silly.
Which is like, okay, that is what happened.
What happened, but it's so overly dramatized and under like representing the truth that it's just like it's watching a propaganda film where I'm like, okay, like I can't trust anything. This is not a reality. This is a figment of a maniacal imagination.
The deeply American empire forever brained like script. It's so wild. God, I have so many thoughts, but I want to also introduce our secondary antagonists, the Maxwells.
I did not think
Father and brother of the Ghislaine Maxwell.
I was thinking about like there are just some names that you just can't name a kid anymore.
Yeah,
and Ghislaine is one of them. Like not like it's like a name I would want to name. It's like because I'd be like, "What's up, Ghislaine?"
For anybody not familiar, Ghislaine Maxwell, the
child predator.
When was she convicted? A year or two ago? God, time. But she was Jeffrey Epstein's madam, basically.
Mm-hmm.
and
His fixer,
his fixer, her father, what's his first name?
Alexander.
Robert Maxwell.
Robert Maxwell.
Was
Robert
also a
Pettit.
famous con man who died of mysterious. He was out on, I think it's his yacht,
He was pissing.
the Lady Ghislaine, and yeah, he was like pissing and quote unquote fell in the water. But if you watch the movie, you'll see they were also in a lot of hot water for stealing like nearly $1 billion from investors.
I think some of the best parts of this movie is when they're just dunking on the Maxwell family, where they're portraying them not only as evil but as doofuses,
Cartoonishly evil.
Yes.
The guy who plays Robert Maxwell, I feel like is wearing some like fat patty.
Yeah.
Like, and not like very well done.
Nope. It's garbage.
It's very cartoonish.
Cheap movie.
Yeah. But you know, I'll take it. You know, if we're gonna dunk on the Maxwells, I'm here for it.
Oh, yeah.
But then it's like so confusing because the real enemy is communism. So like you have like, oh yeah, it was these people, the Maxwells, but they were like the bad kind of capitalists. It's
Yeah.
like what the movie wants you to take away. Like no, like the system they were operating in was fine. They just didn't play it right. It's really communism that's the problem, because like the big damning thing in the movie is when our hero Hank goes to Russia and like finds out Alexei doesn't have control of the rights of his own game, and you're supposed to be like, oh, this is the worst thing that could ever happen to someone.
I know. There's like a pull quote from it where he's like, what do you mean you don't have the rights to the game? That's a crime. And he's like, no, that is communism.
Yeah, and then it's like literally like it's almost like a Soviet guy who stares into the camera and goes, and that is communism. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, no, that was their weird authoritarian thing. It's not what communism would literally mean. Like this whole, if under real communism, this wouldn't even be a problem. It'd just be like a guy who's like, hey, I made this cool thing. And then if people like it, it's like, yeah, you make enough money to live.
Yeah.
And no one is like, ooh, I gotta be the one who makes millions and millions of profit that I can never spend off of it. No. It's the thing you're supposed to be rooting for, is who gets to make millions
Who gets
of
to make the millions. They see justice as being who gets paid. That is the distribution of justice, is who's getting paid.
Right.
And the
and our
secondary
hero did nothing.
The secondary
he's the one who ends up getting paid.
No, he had gumption and can-do attitude.
Like he made a flight to Russia and had some meetings. Like he didn't. Well, we get one scene where he and Alexei are like playing his original version.
American comes up with the idea of 4 rows disappearing at the same time.
Yeah,
a Tetris.
I didn't look up if that was true or not.
I don't know if that's true either, but I know that Alexei and Hank were both EPs on this film, and so I assume that they're not going to be like misrepresenting the others' contributions to the partnership that they established. But the secondary antagonist of Tetris is a fictional character. The Russian KGB operatives that's all made up.
Yeah.
And their main motivation is making money. The communists in the movie are the most diabolical capitalists in the film.
Yeah, but since you're making the money for the state, it is evil.
It is evil.
It's good when you make billions and billions of dollars for just some random guy who's beholden to no one. But if you're making money for the state, which the Soviet Union, they weren't great at it, but the idea is the state is then redistributing it to the people. Yeah. That's evil.
And they made a point of showing that like there were like, food lines, and then the food was running out and people going, how do I feed my family?
Yeah. And like if you talk to people who grew up in Soviet bloc countries, it seems like generationally you'll get mixed reviews. Like most people of our generation, if they got out, they're like, it was fucking awful.
Yeah.
But like people who like lived most of their life, like maybe into adulthood, and I only know this from like reading, just like accounts and books and stuff. Like some people are like, it's weird that America doesn't have some of the stuff we had, of like, oh, like, yeah, like we would just send our kid to child care. It wasn't like you had to spend 30% of your income on it.
Yeah. It's a balancing act, like especially with like world
I'm
powers.
not condoning the Soviet Union's version of communism at all, but
for 5 rubles a month, you can subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/videogames. We will redistribute the wealth to our local video game retailers.
Yeah. Just bizarre.
The guy who plays Hank Rogers is a very handsome man. He's got a great mustache. And
With the hottest wife on the planet.
oh my God, yeah. Akemi. I forget the actress's name, but her character is Akemi. And
So-
she's a beautiful Japanese woman.
Yeah. I didn't quite follow his background enough. Was he a expat to Japan because he wanted to work in the gaming industry, like with Nintendo?
That's a good question. I don't have a good answer. I think he that what you said makes sense because they show his home as being in Tokyo, and he's an American with the Dutch background, and he's married and has children with a Japanese woman. So the daughter, who is like kind of the emotional, like foil for, or center for him to like,
Sort of.
It's showing that he's working so hard that he can't be there for her big recital.
We get one scene of him missing the recital and then one redemption scene of her redoing the recital in front of him and his wife at home.
In a weird,
That's the
weird.
entire relationship.
But that daughter is now the owner of Tetris.
Yeah.
She is running the show, which props to her. She's doing a bad job though. It's not great. It's not great. It's like Tetris
But
at
it's
this
also,
point.
again, it's because it's now been sold and licensed over to capitalists. It's like, we have to keep getting blood out of this stone.
Yeah.
Endless growth. We need profit. And it's like, or you can just have a new idea. Or you can, try something else and just let Tetris be Tetris and be done.
No, that's not how we do it here. No, around here. So the story is just it's a back and forth of Soviet lies, American lies, Japanese lies. All people are lying to each other.
Don't forget those British liars.
Oh my God, they and the British.
Gotta have
Max
on the Maxwells.
Yeah. And it's a back and forth of who actually owns Tetris and how do we monetize it so that America wins.
Yeah.
And when I call this a propaganda film, I'm calling this a propaganda film with a capital P.
It's weird.
It is laden with what I would say is just not misinformation, but just misinterpretations of history. And it shows you just like how cynical filmmaking has gotten these days. It's good. It's well paced. It's an interesting, captivating movie. They know how to put a scene in front of another scene and how to tell a story, but the story that they tell and how it is told is just a little bit off. And it's again, I think I said this to you before. I'm not going to watch this again.
No,
this is not a Fox in space.
Yeah.
This is not something that I'll watch over and over again because it is a piece of art that was made by an artist who cares about what they're doing.
It is very much a product about a product.
Yes.
There's something about the assumption of who you as the viewers alignments should be with. That's really bizarre. And it comes down to I think sort of what we're talking about of our existence is very consumer driven and not values or politics driven.
Sure.
If this makes sense. So the movie operates under the assumption that that basically America, white people, and okay, we'll let Nintendo and Japan in are the good guys.
Yeah.
And the West are the good guys plus Japan, Nintendo, okay. Because Nintendo is here in 2024, Nintendo they are one of the few respectable brands that is not really tarnished in any way in modern times.
Unless you're a game maker. Because they do screw over a lot of game creators.
Publishers or developers?
The developers.
This is not something I'm
Their exclusivity
familiar with what you're saying.
Policy, where you only could publish through Nintendo, and they would basically strangle,
Well, and that's something every console does because they have to justify the existence of consoles. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is where I'm saying Nintendo stands out because their console is at least the Switch. It's a toaster that barely works at this point. But the handheld to TV nature of it, the portability of it, there's a lot of interesting, unique things about the hardware of the Switch. Like Nintendo's still innovating what a console is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Whereas a PlayStation and Xbox, it's just a computer.
It's just a computer with a controller. Yeah.
It's just a computer that like you can only do certain things on.
Yeah.
And that's the exclusivity there is like, that's why they need exclusivity on those platforms.
If I were
They
to
can't justify their existence otherwise.
if I were to choose one console family, it would be Nintendo for sure.
Yeah. And like, I sort of like took a break from gaming until the Switch came out.
Yeah.
And then I bought a Switch and that was the only console I had for a few years.
Same. Yeah.
PS5. But anyways, what were we saying about the Tetris movie? I was about like, it really depends on your consumer brain to align with the protagonists they've chosen, as opposed to just like, this is just a good person with good values. Like, and like, they're going through an interesting hero's journey. They're just like, no, you root for Nintendo and America.
Yeah.
Because you are an American consumer.
Our old buddy Shiggy Miyamoto.
Shiggy doesn't make it into the movie, but he comes close.
He comes close. I wish he was there. I wish his wife was there too. I miss her so much.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about like our philosophy about Shiggy's wife that I was talking about in the last episode. It came up in like some trivia I was reading about the movie that I sent you. Let's see if I still have that screenshot.
Oh, I remember. Why Nintendo chose Tetris.
So in the movie,
Yeah.
we see Hank bring Tetris to, was it the CEO of Nintendo at the time? Because that's the guy who makes the appearance
Yes.
instead of Shigeru.
Although I thought the long hair guy was supposed to be Miyamoto. The guy that was in between that was like, he's not here, and he's like, he's right there.
Oh, I might have missed that.
I think that's supposed to be Shiggy.
Yeah, so there's like a little trivia quote that in my digging around I found that like allegedly the true story there is that like the guy that Hank handed Tetris off to like didn't quite understand it and gave it to Shigeru, who came back and basically told him like, the thing you don't understand about this game is like even your like secretaries and accountants can't put it down.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it huge. And that's like the Shigeru Miyamoto difference of like tuning into like, no. We're not just trying to get people who want hardcore first person shooters. We want to make games for everybody.
For everybody.
And that's just like a very early example of that understanding in his brain.
There's a fun little back and forth between Alexei and the KGB where the KGB officer, I forget, it was like Trifonov or something, the bad one that's Grady and is a state actor.
Yeah.
He kind of implies that like because of Tetris, the Soviet Union is falling because no one's getting any work done.
It's so good.
And that
that's why communism failed.
And they had to install anti-Tetris software.
It wasn't that they were blockaded from trade with the rest of the world and what little they did have was all hoarded by oligarchs. No, it had nothing to do with that. It was everybody was playing Tetris.
That's right. It's the damn block's fault. No, but the popularity of Tetris in the sense that it literally affected work productivity in offices it's noteworthy. And the fact that Tetris was designed with basically a boss button where if your boss is coming, you press escape and it goes right to a blank prompt screen so they don't know that you're playing Tetris.
Yeah.
And that perseveres to this day where it's like there's always going to be like a culture of like hiding your games from your boss. And like I remember I was doing copywriting for a design firm that should not have hired me. And they were like, here's a very nice computer. And I was like, great, full of ROMs immediately. And then they'd be like, oh, did you get that? Did you make that social media post? And I was like, oh, no.
Oh, no, I was just finishing.
Sorry.
I was just doing like another pass on it.
I was playing Dragon View for the Super Nintendo. It's a fun one too.
So I think one of the only things like kind of left for me that was interesting about the movie that's worth talking about is there's the moment that I don't understand why, but the main character is introduced to the Game Boy prototype.
Yeah.
And they're like, only like 12 people have seen this.
Yeah.
And he suggests Tetris being the launch title. And then that is somehow that's like the catalyst for a lot of the conflict, where like, that's when he's like, oh, you got to get the rights from the guy in Russia.
So
I'm not going to pretend that I followed who owned what rights when and where.
It's an examination of how specific wordage is so important in contracts. And what they were doing was that, like, by introducing a new media consumption vessel, they because there were video game rights, there were computer rights, there were arcade rights, and then Nintendo introduced the idea of handheld rights. And so it's really just it's funny that they tried to make this exciting.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, oh yeah, let's talk copyright law for 2 hours. It's also 2 hours long. It should have been 90 minutes.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I hate movies that get too long.
Very few movies should be more than 90 minutes. Yeah. This is absolutely one that needs 20, 30 minutes.
98 minutes is the perfect length.
Right.
Because you got a little bit of time for the credits too, because the credits are a part of the runtime for movies, and that's why so many bad movies have really, really long credits, because you got to hit that 90 to get into theaters, and it's very clever. That's why you see bloopers in the end of lots of really bad movies.
Yeah,
they just didn't have enough to do.
But that was sort of the catalyst for this, and like we see, Super Mario Land is going to be launched on the Game Boy, and he talks them out of it.
Yeah, the apocryphal quote is that, like, if you want to sell a couple 100,000 of these units that little kids will play, package it with Super Mario. Mm-hmm. If you want to sell millions to everybody on the planet, package it with Tetris. And that's some wisdom right there. That is true. Like, it worked. The Game Boy defined the handheld system.
Yeah. And speaking of like weird copyright stuff, I mean, this is pervasive all over, especially like tech, as rapidly as things have evolved with computers and the internet and all this whatnot. But like, I forget when the patent was made, but somebody patented the idea of basically like, what if audio magazine in like the 90s or something?
Like a podcast?
And then what happened was about 12 to 15 years ago, when podcasts started becoming popular, whoever owned that patent started hunting down everybody who was making money off podcasts and trying to be like, you owe me millions of dollars.
Really?
Yeah. There was like a big podcast patent war.
Oh, well, next year, that's going to premiere on Apple TV Plus, the story of the podcast wars.
No, because like it was like at the time, they're like, like Mark Maron's WTF was like king of the podcast. And like, he would talk about it for weeks of like, there's this patent troll out there, that's like trying to take us all down. And he'd like talk to other podcasters.
Yeah.
Because it's so stupid.
Dude, I met this guy who claims to have invented the pop-up.
That's awesome.
And I'm just like, that's bold. That is a bold statement.
What is that? Like the idea of a intentionally temporary business?
It's
what is that?
He's just like a subpar chef with a chip on his shoulder that is just like, he's got to have some claim. And like, if you're gonna tell a lie, tell a big lie. And like, where I'm like, I was just like, almost like, I was like, props, my dude. Like, you are a scumbag.
That's so good.
What a dumb thing to say. What a dumb thing. And especially where, like, see, I'm not going to say where he works, but like, it's like, you work there and you invented the pop-up. Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, you're absolutely going to tell me when the mics are up. Unless, I don't know, like another weird thing. It's like, there's something bizarre for me about like, right behind me at Camp Video Games here is my collection of Nintendo Power magazines.
Love them.
Where I knew Howard Lincoln as president of Nintendo America.
Yeah.
Now here we are watching a movie in 2024, made in 2023, where Howard Lincoln is one of the players in a quote unquote legal thriller.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, does he get punched? Does he throw a punch?
Oh, there's just right when Stein punches a bunch of people.
I was like, I'd rather think of Howard Lincoln as the guy who wrote the nice editorial at the front of Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
Like, oh, some power player and blah, blah, blah.
It's funny. This is because, here at Camp Video Games, when we discuss video game adaptations, it's usually taking place in a fantasy world where there's like, we're learning what the world building is. Whereas this is a very different, very insidious kind of world building where they're taking reality and they're filtering it into to serve their purposes. And like, that's, because people are going to watch this. And at the beginning of the movie, it says based on a true story. And you're like, yeah, based.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that like a millennial or whatever, one of those kids. It's not based, but like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on a true story and is barely taking inspiration from Ed Gein's like killings. And they're very, very, very different from like what happens in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I'd say I hate to say it, but like 6 to 7 out of 10 people watching that movie are gonna be like, that was a real story.
Yeah, they're gonna go and be like, do you know how Tetris got made?
Yeah, exactly. And like that's because like we both work in journalism to some degree, and like the truth comes first.
Right.
There's
scary.
There's no reality outside of the truth except those which are lies told to manipulate you. And like if you can't value the truth in the ugliest of terms with all of its bruises and all of its chipped teeth, and then you're just like, it's like you're just drinking the Kool-Aid, man. It sucks.
There are some there's some interviews about the movie with Alexi and Hank.
Yeah.
That I'd love to hear the audio version of the quotes that they give, because like the tone of them can read so wildly varying in terms of how they feel about how the movie turned out.
Sure.
Where they're like, like the big pieces they did get right.
Yeah.
But
those are called tetraminos.
but like they acknowledge, like, because it was a Hollywood movie, they insisted that there be a car chase and that like this happens.
Yeah.
And that my character is seduced for blackmail or whatever.
She is such a beautiful woman. That Russian woman.
Yeah.
I think her character's name was Sasha, the translator / secret KGB plant.
Yeah.
What a beautiful actress. Like I was like, I'm not often just like enamored when I watch movies, but I was like, oh, okay.
But there's like, again, I only read the quotes that it's like, oh, I'd love to hear how much like resignation is in their tone when they were giving these quotes.
Sure. But specifically with Hank Rogers and Alexei Pajitnov, like they don't have to work a day in their lives. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was very charming in their like the real interviews with them. They're wearing matching Tetris like suit jackets.
I've not seen any of this.
It's very, very charming.
Nice.
And I would like one in a 38, please.
Yeah, I'm looking at the end of one of their quotes. I'll just read the quote.
Yeah, do it.
They tried their best to accept our changes. Wait, let me see which one of them's talking.
Yeah, you got to do the accent.
I think this is Hank. They tried their best to accept our changes when they had to do with authenticity. But when it started getting into creative flourishes, like the car chase and all that, it was like, okay, now it's all them. We couldn't change anything. That's one of those quotes. I'm like, I'd love to hear what was his tone like when he gave
absolutely.
that quote. Was he just saying like, oh, I get it, it's Hollywood, but they're telling our story that's exciting? Or was it like, God, I can't believe we gave up?
They really seem to be all smiles about this. I don't, because like the movie portrays them both so heroically. Yeah. Like Pajitnov is like this, like, he's like a bit of a tortured genius who's, the only thing holding him back is the Iron Curtain. And like, and
the
Hank
castle
Rogers,
that he's being kept in by Bowser.
Hank Rogers is so cool. He's so handsome. He's played by the guy that played Elton John in the Elton John biopic. I don't know his name, but he's like a really good looking guy. Good performances all around, I would say, in the movie in general. Like I think Maxwell Sr. was probably the most cartoonish and least
very
convincing. His son, who just gets like shit on the entire movie, is being like a Draco Malfoy kind of kid. Mm-hmm. Like fine, but
that dynamic feels very much like somebody watched season 1 of Succession.
Yeah.
I was like, we can do that.
Sure.
And it doesn't work.
But I think Hank and Alexi are Like they've got the poster for this up in their living room. Do they live together too? No, I just like I imagine anytime there's
awesome.
like you and I like we share a bunk bed.
Yeah,
that's just how we live.
A bunk bed.
Yeah, I get the top. My wife gets the bottom. You sleep under the bed with your partner.
Yeah. UAs. There now I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. The gamer critique of the movie.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Fuck. There was a part where I had to walk away.
I very similarly.
And my wife was like, "It's not that bad of a movie," and I was like, "You don't get it." I was like, "Don't try to console me right now."
So
it's taking place in 1988 or 85 or whatever.
Right.
It's taking place in the 80s.
yeah.
Go ahead. I can't do it.
It's
too bad.
They tried to do this cutesy thing where they hired designers to do a few like 8-bit style animated whatever to like makes it more actiony, and this is more like it's just a style choice. I can get over it. That it's like it would have been cool if they kept themselves within the parameters in designing the like, cutscenes, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Of what the hardware at the time could handle. Like that would have been honestly really cool.
If it looked like the same fidelity as watching Tetris like on a CRT.
Yeah, like well, both like what it looks like on a CRT and like the limitations.
Yeah.
Sprites, like pixel count, color count that you would have on like an NES.
Right. So you're
Instead, they just sort of like ball out with animation and give it like 8-bit aesthetic.
Right. You're referring to these little animated interludes where the setting that you see starts off pixelated somewhat in a it's very stylized, and then it dissolves into reality.
Yeah.
And then in the car chase, they incorporated more of that in almost like a magical realism way, which I thought was very, very distracting from what was going on.
Yeah, it completely takes you out of what's going on.
It seemed very tacked on at the last minute, or it was their original idea and it was just a bad idea and it didn't work.
Right. And then I texted you about this before you'd even seen the movie.
So I went into watching this movie very, very low expectations.
Yeah. I like there's a couple points where he specifically references NES games that were out at the time.
Yes.
He references
Mario and Luigi.
Super Mario was like, who's Mario without Luigi?
Right, because he's trying to justify a partnership with Nintendo. He's like, you need a partner. Everyone needs a partner. That's why Mario has Luigi. Why Link has Zelda.
So cut away from him saying that to Super Mario Brothers. Mm-hmm. And it's just like the most pristine, like we just captured an HD ROM emulation of Mario. Like somebody literally just downloaded a ROM of Mario, used whatever filter came on it, and just captured it.
Well, no, they went to your basement. They opened up one of the gun safes and they got the very legally obtained copy of the game.
And it just like, for anybody who doesn't know, like if you play a modern ROM, like if you want it to look anything like it looked, we played them in the 80s. The games were visually designed so that the colors and the pixels would like blur together in a way that made them greater than the sum of their parts. And they don't look like grainy and pixelated in quite the same way on original CRT hardware that they're designed for. And there are at least bare minimum filters on almost any emulator.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can get the CRT scan line and all that fun. Like little, it's like the fuzz of the vinyl LP when you put the needle on.
And it makes the colors
crackle,
and it like makes the sprites like seem more dynamic than they are in terms of like how much is going on with the design. They don't bother with that in the movie. They like even again like. It looks like they just captured it off an emulator. Just throw a CRT filter on it, bare minimum. It's not that hard.
You haven't gotten to the main crime yet, though.
What?
We haven't gotten to the main crime of the film yet.
Then we get to who's Link without Zelda, and the cutaway is from Four Swords Adventure.
That's right.
Where you just play as multiple Links who are different colors. They don't even show Zelda. Does he say without Zelda? Is that what he said?
Yeah. Like, who's Link without Zelda?
And so they cut away to a game from 1999 or 2000 or something. It's just like, what are we even doing?
So sloppy. It is like...
It's just for like the lowest common denominator to go,
They showed the thing he said. It does not make sense. Like Nintendo had to have signed off on this because obviously they're discussing like inner business deals. Like I don't know, Nintendo being one of the most litigious companies in the world. I mean, you were talking pretty highly of Nintendo.
No, I'm not.
At least
about their
hardware is fine.
Legal.
But it's the legal team that really gets you because they're responsible for shutting down all of the major emulation websites and like threatening insane lawsuits, like just absolutely too big.
Yeah, and worth noting, my stance on emulation is like it's fine because like it's an astounding number. The Video Game Historical Society surely has it like on the front of their website, but it's like something like 80 to 90% of video games throughout history are not available to just like retail play, right? So like emulation is fine. Like that's historical preservation. Yes. Nintendo's not making money off stuff they're shutting down. But anyway, so that's all to say, like Nintendo is extremely litigious and controlling of their properties. And the fact that like, to me, what it looked like, what that shot says is like, oh, we could have somebody play to the end of the original Legend of Zelda, which is the only time you see Zelda. That would take too long.
You think that
capture that 3 seconds of footage? Let's just fire up a game that has like a few recognizable characters show up in the first few minutes.
It's absolutely slime.
It's bizarre.
What it did for me as an audience member is it lost its credibility. It's like, where it's just like,
no one here cares.
What are we doing? Like, it's like, what's the point? If you're not going to at least do, and I think we're the right podcast to be complaining on this. And we're the only podcast that at least is charming enough to get mad about it and it's still reasonable. But
I mean, I'm not blaming it on woke, at least.
right.
I'm blaming it on laziness. But it is like a complete oversight of like attention to detail that tells me like, you don't actually care about what you're making, so why should I? Right?
Yeah, exactly. If you don't care, why should I care? That's a really good way of putting it. So Tetris 2023, at the end of the movie, I was like, that was fun. I had a fun time watching it, but I'm mad right now. So I'm gonna say it's kind of a true neutral to me. I would not cross the street to avoid walking past it, but I would not stop for another conversation.
You know what? Honestly, if I'm going back to our rankings, should I just start reading the rankings at the end of episodes?
Absolutely not.
I mean, it's not long.
It'll get longer every time.
Yeah, well, I'm going to do it right now. Okay. So I think this is our agreed upon ranking of what we've covered so far.
Sure.
I'll go from bottom to top. Bottom, Donkey Kong Country animated series. Next, we have Zelda animated series. Then we have Lara Croft Tomb Raider. I didn't say which one was which, though.
I'd put them next to each other.
Yeah. I would say the 2018 is maybe a little better. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I enjoyed that one way more. And John Voight being a Zionist, like, I don't like the...
Yeah. We don't need that. So then we have the next Tomb Raider. Street Fighter 2 anime. Advent Children, Final Fantasy 7, and then way above all of them is a Fox in Space.
Yeah,
fan-made product.
Fan-made product. Yep.
I honestly would put this behind Zelda.
So,
because the thing about Zelda,
between Zelda and Donkey Kong Country, like this is the second worst thing we've watched.
Because for me, at least Zelda is like this fascinating product of the moment it came out, whereas this is just like a reminder of how cynical the time we live in is.
Yeah. There's just part of me that wants to rank the Zelda cartoon a little bit higher. I feel like maybe we each have our own rankings too, because, we are not a unified voice on certain like things that we discuss. And Siskel and Ebert, they each had a thumb.
Right.
But I also am blinded by nostalgia with the Legend of Zelda cartoon. So that's where, it's hard to be objective about this very subject.
For me, it was more fun to like see like what it was saying about the moment it was made.
Yeah.
Like how like wildly contrasting it was to like Nintendo and its sort of values that you see in the games with like how westernized it was. Like that was fascinating. Whereas this, I was like, God, this is so depressing. That we're still making Red Scare propaganda films in 2023, and that like it's purely a deeply cynical, like, let's just see if we can squeeze a few more bucks out of Tetris.
Yeah.
While also like bastardizing the story of these two guys who like, I hope they're happy with it, like, is where I kind of land.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
as a viewer, it's like, you didn't really like, you didn't like preserve their legacy in a way that I think stands the test of time. But that being said, the movie is being sued by the author of the book that it was ripped from. So hopefully the book is better.
I wonder. I'm not going to read it.
No, I'm not going to read
Oh,
it. I'll just assume it was probably
I might read it.
a better way of preserving these guys' legacy than this really silly, cynical movie.
I'm just going to keep playing Tetris every time I take a dump.
Well stated. Well stated. And I think that's a good place to go out, honestly.
Campers, I'm sorry I talked about my bowel movements so much this episode. That's kind of rare for me. But when Tetris comes up, gotta make it clear.
It is what it is.
Yep. Thanks for hanging out. It's been a pleasure. And please go ahead, and if you sign up for our Patreon, it would be our move to then say thank you to you and everyone else involved already. So that was a weird way of begging for attention, but that's where we're at.
I'll always take more attention.
Tell your friends. Plenty of room here at Camp Video Games for more and more happy campers.
Strong exit. We'll see you next week. Pretty sure we're going to watch The Wizard and play NES Championship Edition.
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
All right, that's a good ending. Sure.
If you'd like to write to us, send a message to campvideogames@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at Camp Video Games. If you want to become a real happy camper, you can support Camp Video Games on Patreon. For $5 a month, you'll be granted access to even more discussions about movie-based video games, game-based movies, full-length commentaries, playthroughs, and more. Whether you sign up or not, we're glad to have you here at Camp Video Games.